What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. Jason, Joe, and Crams are here. This is the big one, at least for us. I don't know how much of our audience cares about 2021 and new music, but this is my favorite video to make every year. Albums of the year. Been listening to a ton of music all year long, and this is the one video where we finally get to talk about all of our favorite stuff. Very excited to see what you guys have on your top 10s. We're each doing a full top 10 ranked in order, 10 down to 1. We'll give you a few honorable mentions right before we get to number 1. We'll give you some dishonorable mentions as well. Thoughts overall on the year before we get into the specific picks?
Overall thoughts, I got a few. I thought at one point in this year, I think everyone knew that I thought it was a terrible year. It was going to be worse than last year. And then it all kind of changed around. It was one day in particular. There's like 5 albums came out that were all 4 stars in my mind. And it kind of, from that moment, and this was only a couple of months ago, it kind of pivoted. I think it's a very deep year. I had a lot of albums that I think are very good, 4-star albums. Much higher kind of average score than last year. No 5 stars, but I thought as a whole, very solid year. A lot of variety, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying that I am quite sick, powering through it, so I sound a little different here. 2-star voice going on right now, but I thought this year was tremendous. Scratch that adjective. Really great, really good. Not tremendous like in other years. Better than 2020. I don't have any 1 stars. We don't have a Bon Jovi 2020 situation here for the deep seller. Last year, I had 2 5 stars, American Head by Flaming Lips and Set My Heart on Fire Immediately by Perfume Genius. You sure I got 4 5 stars and then a bunch of 4.5s. So overall, in terms of how bad it got versus how great it got, I got 21 as a far improvement. And my favorite thing about this year is I thought it was a really good year for debuts, which is something that I made a point to seek out. Wanted to find bands that I don't know, didn't even really read about, just saw listings of releases, don't know this band, boom, listen to it, and it turned out pretty good. There's also some other bands that have been around that I've never gotten around to listen to the release this year. So it was kind of like a first time debut for me, and that kind of made it a special year as well. So a lot of new things on my horizon that made it a very interesting and very cool year for me.
I thought it was a good year, very comparable to last year. I think lines up pretty much similar. I had 6 5 stars last year. I wasn't giving stars last year, but retroactively going back, I would give 6 of them 5 stars. I only got 5 this year, so 1 fewer, but those 5 stars that I'm giving this year, all of them or most of them would be above everything last year. So at the very top for me, I think it's stronger than last year. The depth about the same. A good year, tons of good stuff. I listened to a ton of albums this year, more than last year. So yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
What was everyone's winner last year? I had American Head by Flaming Lips. Joe?
I had Sawayama by Rina Sawayama.
And I had St. Cloud by Waxahachie.
All right, my number 10, and I had a couple, I was shuffling up until a couple hours ago, 5 o'clock maybe. Landed number 10, I'm going with an artist who had a song on my top 5 this year. Go Allison Russell and Outside Child. I think I was struggling, where do I put this? It's not exactly my type of music. It has some Americana vibes. It has a little bit of jazz on it. There's prominent clarinet solos all over the place. So it's kind of this weird mix. It's very soft in places. She dabbles in like French lyrics or French singing lyrics, very harrowing about her abuse basically at her father at a young age and kind of how that affected her and how the city of Montreal kind of was her like a haven, her stronghold. And I mean, sometimes it dips into like really sparse arrangements. And I kind of had to like force myself to go back and really listen to the lyrics and the music. And it really kind of grew on me, other than Persephone, which I love right off the bat. The rest of the album, definitely a grower. There's a couple sort of more active songs where there's more going on, the Runner, the Hunters. There's like hints of lap steel in spaces, but mostly it's very kind of soft and jazzy. It never delves, like it never gets into like real darkness. There's almost like a lightness to it despite the lyrics, which I thought was nice, like a survivor's sort of coping and coming to grips with it and coming out stronger. And I think she is just so interesting, has an unbelievable voice. You know, the star is her. That it grew on me in the last second. I had to put it on my top 10 because I think it's a really good, kind of important album. So that'll be my number 10, Outside Child by Allison Russell.
Get around to listening to that because you guys were hyping it up a lot, and I liked it. I thought it was 3 stars, which is good for me.
Great album, 4.5 stars for me, just missing my top 10. All right, so here we go. Number 10 was tough. I had 9 that were locks for my top 10. In the 10 spot, I was going between a ton of different things. Basically, from 10 to 20, the quality is not that different. So, man, there was a lot of records battling for this last spot. And I am giving it to Butterfly 3000 by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I believe you guys talked about this on Good Music America. Joe, maybe one of you did, right? I missed out on the King Gizzard talk. So Gizzard's an interesting band. This is their 18th album. I don't know how many years, but they've been just like rattling off records at a crazy rate. And people love this band, and I totally get why. They put out a ton of stuff. They're always changing. They're interesting. They're doing weird, cool things all the time. And if I was more into psych rock, I mean, they would probably be my favorite band because they're the coolest thing happening in that genre right now, I think. And I've been listening to them for a while now, just kind of checking in, and every once in a while I like the record, and mostly I'm not that interested. The only one that ever really grabbed me prior to this one was Fishing for Fishies, which I thought was really cool. This one is a bit of a different direction for them, and I just love the sound of it. It kind of lands in the ballpark of MGMT and Tame Impala and maybe a little Animal Collective thrown in there, somewhere in that neighborhood. The tracks on this record are all built around modular synth loops. And because of that, it has this really interesting, different feel. It kind of almost feels like an electronic record in some ways, although it feels more electronic than it actually is. There's still a lot of guitar, drums, bass, rock instrumentation still happening. But those synth loops just give the song this like momentum and this energy. There's almost not even like a ton of distinction between songs. They kind of all bleed together a little bit. And a lot of the record has a similar feel. And I think, in fact, that the band intends the record to be thought of as like a 10-song suite more than a record. And I think it ends up working in spite of the sameness, just because of that momentum and the changing and the way the songs unfold. And there's always like interesting things popping up, and the melodies are so good. Every line seems to be like an earworm, just catchy part after catchy part, and it's so cool. It's a very joyful record. It almost gives you the sense of like flying at times, just the way that the songs move along. But at the same time, there's also kind of like a self-examination. A lot of the lyrics are kind of like inward looking, and there's like this little bit of existential dread happening on the record as well. He'll sing a line like, "It's coming up, Beach Boys. It's going to be a lot of fun." But then right after that, he'll say the water's getting deeper. It's going to drown everyone. And he says 2.02 killer year, the year that broke the broken wheel. Is it enough that we're a speck of dust speeding through a void of stuff? We teeter on an axe edge. So there's like darkness in the lyrics, but at the same time, it definitely feels more joyous than the lyrics may sound at times. It's a very upbeat, fun record. And it just really hooked me in from the first time I heard it. And every time I've heard it since, it just feels even more and more infectious. Can't get enough of it. Number 10.
The comment section will be pleased with your pick.
Yeah, it was on a list of things I wanted to listen to back when it came out earlier this year. Just never got around to it. And like Joe said, really highly recommended by a lot of commenters that I respect and adore. My favorite psych rock album of the year won't be in my top 10, but I'll give it a little shout out. Entertainment Death by the Spirit of the Beehive was really cool. And Psychedelic Porn Crumpets had a cool album, but they're a little bit different psych rock. It's actually a really good album, and but it leans more toward hard rock. All right, my number 10 is an entry I'm really happy to get on here. My numbers 9 through 1 are all 4.5 stars and up, so those were easy to lock into the top 10. This 10 spot was a fight between like 20 or so 4-star candidates. And I'm giving it to an artist that has always kind of underwhelmed me, like I've always really liked but never loved as much as critics. My number 10 is Courtney Barnett with Things Take Time, Take Time. She's always been a tremendous lyricist, but I always thought some of her songwriting always got lost with kind of just that lo-fi angsty vibe she always put forward rather than just letting kind of blend into her songwriting. But this album kind of takes a different turn than that. It's a lot less visceral than her other works. This is her 3rd or 4th album, I believe. And it brings the songs in focused a bit more here. And the songs are kind of simpler, kind of less like garage rock kind of oriented and more like singer-songwriter with that, kind of grungy sound behind it. And that could be because of the pandemic. But the songs are like much less sure of themselves, and that attitude and confidence that she has is still there, but it's not kind of what she's, waving the flag with. It's kind of like her Stop and Smell the Roses album. I think the leadoff track, Ray Street, is the best song on the album, one of my favorite songs of the year. It obviously has her style. It's got that indie lo-fi slacker rock kind of vibe, a la Kurt Vile, her boy she collaborates with. They have very similar styles, especially in their singing style with their inflection. It's very cool. Jangly indie guitar, again, some songs with drum loops. It's a very sparse record, usually focused on just like one instrument or the composition within that instrument, while everything else behind it is just kind of giving it aid, which is nice. The songs here are a little bit more longing and a little bit more helpless than I'm used to with her albums, almost like love letters at times, and very simple. It's almost like it's just like a dirty flower pop album for her. A song like Sunfair Sundown is really playful and flowery, but it's like the petals are just kind of charred a little bit. So there is sort of that stamp she always gives. Here's the Thing is an awesome song. She does just these really simple lines all over the album. Like here, she says, I don't know what to say, so far away, I feel insecure. Like these are really just simple, direct to the point kind of lyrics for her, not messing around with what she's thinking. There's a great song called Before You Go. And it's like, before you gotta go, go, go. I wanted you to know, no. You're always on my mind. You're always on my mind. Like, she's doing this repetition and everything that's just making everything just, like I said, come into more focus. Songs are short and sweet. Whole album's maybe 35 minutes long. Great stuff on the back half, like the song If I Don't Hear From You Tonight. There's a song called Write a List of Things to Look Forward to. It's kind of her Americana driving on the highway sounding song. Splendor has a really cool downbeat shoegaziness to it. Closes with a really nice simple piano ballad called Oh the Night. I think it's just like her kind of coming into her own and realizing that her songwriting craft can be the power of her artistry. And I think it's a pretty good stepping stone to what could be like great 5-star albums for her. So that's my number 10. Courtney Barnett with Things Take Time, Take Time.
Okay, moving on. We're flying through these. Just kidding. About 20 minutes later, we're on number 9. My number 9, probably the most mainstream artist I have on my list. So I went a little weird this year, but these guys, pretty cut and dry, fish and chips. I got Royal Blood with Typhoons on this one. I feel like they were listening to a lot of Arctic Monkeys, maybe a little Discovery, the Daft Punk one, before they made this one, because they've just upped the disco beats big time. If you're unfamiliar with the band, it's just bass and drums, which I always think, that the timbre of the bass kind of gives it just a little bit different sound and feel, because they're basically, a bass heavily distorted, the lead instrument. So it's kind of cool. It's a different sound. This one, they really lean into like the drum and bassness of it. A lot of the kind of danceable stuff. There's a bunch of female backing vocals on it, which is nice. So they're definitely going away. They were getting real heavy, really, with this Things Are Gonna Get Dark or whatever their last one was in 2016, 17. Been a little while for them. And I think they've found a new direction, a little more exciting, a little more, palatable to the mainstream. Some great tracks, Trouble's Coming, Typhoons, Limbo. It has that heaviness that you kind of expect from a Royal Blood album, but it's just like a cooler, more, I keep coming back to danceable. It's a danceable record. All of these things seem to be built around the dance, the disco beats, but still, hard rock DNA in there, a little, disco heavy metal, I guess. Plenty of synths, good vocals, poppier kind of songwriting, a lot of hooks. It seems definitely more about the hook than maybe the heaviness that they sort of, just dabbled in before. Well, not dabbled, but made their kind of sound before. So it's not too far, left turn here, but I think they've shored up their sound. So quality, poppy, radio friendly, new direction for Royal Blood. I like it. 4 stars, my number 9. Typhoons.
I would definitely say it's still a pretty heavy album. It's loud for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely loud. I mean, think like robot rock or, something like Daft Punk where it's just big synth, big bass, big drums, but kind of a danceable beat. And it's still close to, hard rock. It's not completely gone away from that, but they definitely were looking for a new direction on this. And I think they found sort of what's next for them.
All right, very nice. I did not get to that one this year. My number 9 is I Thought of You by Julie Doiron. And I have to say that I did not know her back catalog. I went into this record a little blind, but she does have a fairly substantial back catalog. And she was also in a band from Canada called Eric's Trip, which I was familiar with because they were friends with Sloan back in the 90s. So I knew the name. This is her first solo record since 2012, so it's been a minute. The only reason I checked this record out is because she's on You've Changed Records, which is a label that was co-founded by my boy, Daniel Romano. He's not in my top 10 this year, but you do still have to listen to me talk about him a little bit. The second I put this record on, I knew Daniel Romano was involved. It instantly sounds like his band, basically, and it's Daniel playing on the record and his brother Ian playing drums. And Ian Romano is just a monster drummer, one of my favorite drummers at the moment. So that means the playing is great on it, and I love the sound. I love that type of production that Daniel does. But this would definitely not be in the top 10 without Julie's great voice and great songs. And so just as I knew instantly that Daniel was involved, I also forgot almost as quickly that he was involved because the songs are so great. Her voice is so captivating. And she covers a lot of different ground on the record, from the kind of Courtney Barnett-esque opener, You Gave Me the Key, to the gorgeous Dreamed I Was, to the French sung Et Mon Amour, both of which have like a little tinge of Velvet Underground going on, to the more country esque Darkness to Light. I just find her voice completely captivating. I think the songwriting is top notch. The production, like I said, is killer. It's a singer-songwriter record, like a lot of my picks are going to be. But at the same time, this record is a great rock and roll record. There's great rock playing on it. It's not always like heavy, but it's just got a cool rock and roll attitude to it. And I think it's really great. Number 9.
All right. My number 9, going up to 4.5 stars here. This is a really great record. We have talked about it as a threesome on the channel. I've got Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast. Lyrics are great. It's the number one thing you can take away from here. Michelle Zauner, the leader of the band, the lead singer, also this year came out with a New York Best Time seller called Crying in the Middle of H Mart or something like that. I don't think that's something like that. And that's kind of the sensation you get from this album. Like, she presents you this voice of being someone alone with her thoughts and not understanding this complete mechanism of society around her. And the way that kind of unravels throughout this album is the best thing about it. Because the first two tracks, Paprika and Be Sweet, are these easygoing, sweet, sugary, innocent pop tracks, great tracks. And then the album kind of devolves into something a little bit more darker, a little bit darker, a little bit more succumb to sadness and introverted. And that's kind of the brilliance of this album, is it kind of takes you on that journey of naive love into thinking everything's great, everything's not so great, and then you're left alone with your thoughts. The sound is really cool. It's a big blend of big like 80s pop and shoegaze and dreamlike kind of themes. It's kind of obscure. I wouldn't say she's down to earth, but maybe like she's down to Mars, because it's very familiar, but also not at the same time. It's very cool. She just paints these really cool pictures of loneliness, like out of this world. And her voice is great. She has this really lovely, high-pitched, sweet voice, really innocent, delicate sounding. And the album has just had this jubilation about very dark things. Like the song In Hell is a countdown to losing a loved one. Really great idea. I bounced between 4 and 4.5, but eventually went higher because I love the melodies and how they're kind of this steady, sweeping, moving melodies. Like she's like surfing in the sky. It's very, very just going with the flow and kind of weaves in and out of the music really nicely. And it's kind of tremendous comfort music moments, like the saxophone in the song Slide Tackle. It's got that perfect balance of dark lyrics with her brave kind of disposition, and the sound just kind of brings this warm blanket to keep you cozy. Posing and Bondage is probably the heaviest thing on it. Perfectly done right in the middle. That and Sit, which is a really kind of dark, shoegazy, romantic, hazy song right in the middle. So it's got really good balance, really good flow all the way through. I think it's greatly sequenced. Starts off sugary, like I was saying, and then kind of takes you on that journey. Savage Boy is a really cool song. And yeah, In Hell, one of my favorite lyrics of the year is, you'll be dead within a year. I've come to expect it. There's nothing left to fear. At least there's that. Like a really cool, dark lyric with her voice and the sound behind it just makes a really cool mechanism of music. So my number 9, I would expect it to maybe show up again on this video, but we'll see. Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast.
I do love those first 4 tracks. The sequencing, though, that's what gets me. Not going to appear on mine, spoiler, but those first 4 tracks are phenomenal. My number 8, this one cast a spell on me, and apparently Anthony Fantano from the Needle Drop, because he gave it a 10 out of 10, which I just recently discovered. I got The Turning Wheel from Spelling, 3 L's. This one is a really, I mean, if you turn on the first track and you hear her voice, you'd be like, okay, well, now I know why Joe likes it. Got a bit of that like pinched Kate Bush vocal stuff, but it's a really cool mix of like loungy jazz, pop, like on the opener Little Deer, kind of, chamber pop stuff, Emperor with an Egg. She's singing about an emperor penguin and like leopard seals. It's not Japanese Breakfast. It's not, Allison Russell. There's no like real personal, introspective lyrics here. It's very kind of mystical and magical. A nice kind of change up from maybe the, heaviness of some of these lyrics. But the music is fantastic. Emperor with an Egg has this like chugging 80s, almost like Radio Gaga beat to it. Then there's, bunch of orchestration. It's very like Genesis kind of meets Kate Bush meets little 80s, little jazz, bunch of horns in here. Boys at School, definitely the centerpiece. Just giant grand piano, these brooding synths, and like some really cool Steve Hackett like guitar textures kind of drop in. And it's just one of those albums that sort of I'm always going to turn to. As soon as I heard it, I was kind of like taken with it, just because it's not, Olivia Rodrigo sour. Like there's none of that here. It's just all sort of like, let's be kind of magical and gothic. And, I'm always going to like that. I think it's a really cool album, especially for this year. Definitely takes me back to, late 70s, 80s. So that's why it's on my list. Number 8, Spelling with The Turning Wheel.
Joe is coming with the stuff back to back that I did not listen to. So, yeah, it's good. Variety. Here we go. Number 8 for me is going to be One Hand on the Steering Wheel, the Other Sowing a Garden by AOTY. I'm going back to back with the Canadians. This record in the US at least is out on Saddle Creek Records. Marshall Vore, Phoebe Bridgers' sometimes producer, produced it. Harrison Whitford, who is Phoebe Bridgers' guitarist, plays on it. It was mixed by Burke Reed, who mixed records for Courtney Barnett. So that kind of puts you, it gives you a sense of the realm that this record exists in, those kind of touchstones, big indie rock, singer-songwriter type of thing. And this record does sound like those touchstones would lead you to believe it does, but with so many surprises and twists, you think you're in that world and then it just goes somewhere else for a minute, and it's really cool. The shift in sound from the opener Damn to the second track, Can't Stop Me From Dying, is so cool, so unexpected, so different, especially the first time I heard it, and having never heard her before. This isn't her first record, but the first one I listened to. So it sets the opening track sets up this expectation, and then she immediately just like pulls the rug out from under you. It's also a concept record in some ways as well. The record takes place in Montreal, and her website has a map of where all of the songs take place, which is pretty cool. It really puts you in the world of the record, and it's really like an exploration of that place and that time in her life, and it feels like a very personal exploration of her past. But like I said, just so many cool, surprising elements, arrangement wise especially. You got these weird as hell strings on the song Backyard, which are so cool. I can't really imagine a cooler arrangement for that song. It's so creative. But then it kind of brings you back to home base on the next track, Writer in New York, which is a great song in its own right, but it's kind of, back to basic singer-songwriter, indie folk. And I just think it's a great example, this record. I got all these singer-songwriter records, but I think this record is a really good example of how much can still be done within the genre and how fresh it can still sound if you just have really great songs and you're open to exploring different arrangement ideas and taking the songs into unique places. So I think it's an excellent record. Number 8, One Hand on the Steering Wheel, the Other Sowing a Garden.
Don't know that. Don't know spelling. So I'll have to check those out. Post-award show, unfortunately. My number 8 is an album I don't think either of you mentioned that you listened to. I've got Friends That Break Your Heart by James Blake. I believe I have nominated James Blake before. Oh, okay. Both of you guys have. Great. My apologies. I can't remember if I have nominated him before. He's been close. However, I do think this is probably my favorite of his. I've got it at 4.5. And man, dear Ed Sheeran, this is what a good, modern, soft, sensitive guy voice sounds like. This is probably among my favorite male vocal performances of the year. His falsettos on this album are just so fragile and beautiful. The whole album is sung like this eulogy on the verge of tears, but like he knows he's got to be like the brave face, the strongest one at the funeral. And the song Funeral, he says at one point, I know this feeling all too well of being alive at your own funeral. Great line. It's a very intimate album, but also kind of existential and really smart. Nothing really new sonically about it. It's got that electronic atmosphere with like little elements of rap and hip hop. Really underrated little hooks right off the bat with Famous Last Words. Great little keyboard track. I think the approach to this album is what's very different than his other stuff. It's his most basic, not as experimental and focused on the scape. There's a bunch of ballads, very straightforward, simple songs with more convention than usual, less experimental, like I said, but he covers everything here. It's bright, it's mellow, it's explosive, somber, exciting, relaxing. The R&B registers in his voice are gorgeous, and it allows him to emote all of this energy and just like take the characterization of his lyrics without getting loud. It's really cool. There's something really just alluring about this album that's hard to put your finger on with all of his music, really, which is why he's cool. There's nothing rigid or angular about it. The vibes of this are just like this slow moving, vibrant, like purple smoke cloud. It's very cool. And I really love how sedated it can be at times. There's heavy ideas and grim outlooks, but this sort of like Eastern philosophical steadiness comes in where he's like accessing his emotions and understanding the separation of like feeling and understanding his emotions, and presents them so sensibly with such little intensity for how intense some of the songs can be. Funeral, like I said, is a beautiful track. Frozen is really odd and cool with some good rap on it, actually. I'm So Blessed, Your Mind, maybe my favorite song on it. Really cool production. Operatic female vocals coming in with steady piano and really cool bleep and bloop sections, followed by like this James Bond-esque strings coming in. Would be a great Bond guy, I would say. Is a great Bond guy. Maybe the best on the album, like I said. Beautifully stacked harmonies everywhere on here. Lost Angel Nights is a gorgeous song and an example of amazing control in his voice as he kind of like effortlessly floats from that really high falsetto and then like that bassy baritone, literally syllable to syllable. It's so impressive. Closes with this really nice like celestial bouncy like cosmic ballad called If I'm Insecure. I think this is simultaneously his most rewarding album to longtime fans, and kind of the album that if you've never heard him, this would be the one to listen to, I would say. That's the most approachable. So I was really pleased with this. I was a little let down, I think, with his last album. I could be wrong about that. I could be mixing up some years, but so this was a really nice, pleasant surprise when I listened to it. I couldn't put it down for like 2 days. So number 8, 4.5 stars, Friends That Break Your Heart by James Blake.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. I like James Blake, I guess. I don't know. It's a good album, though, but yes, I listened to it because you were breathlessly talking about it earlier in the year. Not a lot of male on my top 10 list, though. Not a lot of females, including this one. I got Valentine by Snail Mail. I think it's the best of the slightly bratty female-fronted, like almost not quite emo, but in the past, I feel like this would kind of fall into emo. Definitely the breakup album of the year. Probably my favorite lyrics outside of Allison Russell. Snail Mail, aka Lindsey Jordan. He's vulnerable, emotional, bitter. All comes out perfectly in the lyrics. Really like the instrumentation. It's got kind of those chunky guitars, big lush synthesizers. There's a little bit of like Always feel on a song like Glory. And it never devolves into self-pity. Great lyrics on one of my favorite songs of the year, Forever Sailing. The way she kind of like shifts things around, like one verse she'll kind of talk about how her obsession changes things, and then a couple verses later she'll talk about obsession of the other person. Just the way she turns a phrase, I think, is really cool. Forever Sailing in particular kind of has like this a weird mix of like 80s beat, 90s, like almost like Desiree, kind of like R&B slow burn on it. And then she has like they're kind of very 2000s vocals on it. So it's this kind of this mix that doesn't quite seem like it would fit together, but she starts hitting these high notes towards the end of it, and she just nails it. I think she's a really great artist in general. I liked Lush from a couple years ago. I think this ups the power, ups the lyrics. She's getting a little more mature about everything. And musically, super catchy, much better than like Sour. And I think she's much better with the phrase over, like Taylor Swift. Like her breakup seems real. Doesn't seem like it's staged or she's writing just to like be clever. So I don't know, maybe just me and Snail Mail just kind of feel the same way, but great album. Really like this one, Valentine. My number 7 for 2021.
I did really like that album, but I did not love it. I just have it at 3.5. I think it's really good. There's something just a little bit missing from me, but good pick.
All right, Joe is completely right about the females this year, just knocking it out of the park. Really filling up my top 10 as well. Number 7, I've got another female singer-songwriter, but I know that you guys know this one. I've got I Know I'm Funny, Haha by Faye Webster. At number 7, I've been pretty vocal about my Faye Webster fandom on this channel. I made a video about her before you guys even joined the channel. Each of her 2 previous records are in the upper echelon of my very favorite records of the previous decade. This one didn't hit me quite as hard or as fast as those 2 did. I had heard, she released some singles from this record way back, I think 2020. I heard Better Distractions before this record came out. Same with In a Good Way. In fact, I feel like those songs even felt more like the Atlanta Millionaires Club album cycle than this one. And then when this record came out, they were on it, which I was happy to have them on an LP. But I think having known those songs for so long, and then also having seen her live, I knew some of the songs that appeared on this record. Like, I know for sure she did Both All the Time when I saw her live, which was pre-pandemic, so that's going back a ways. So maybe that diminished my excitement or feeling for this record at first, but I stuck with it, and there's just no denying the quality of the songs. I think one of the most brilliant songwriters, I think, of the last 5 to 10 years. I'm constantly amazed by the depth in her writing while simultaneously being very simple. Her songs are not at all super wordy or anything like that. She's so concise, and she can just boil things down to simple lines and stanzas that say so much, and they also have like double meanings and are deeply layered, and they make you think about them. I love the lines, will I stop crying for once? It's hurting my eyes. There's a difference between lonely and lonesome, but I'm both all the time. To say so much just so quickly and powerfully, I think it's amazing. I also love the arrangements on her records. There's touches of country music, folk music, but there's also like R&B and rock, and it's just really, really cool and a unique sound. And I just think she's a phenomenal songwriter. I love her. Faye Webster, number 7.
She is phenomenal.
She's your Lana Del Rey, I think.
Yeah, that's safe to say.
Well, Lana Del Rey is my Lana Del Rey, and Faye Webster is my Faye Webster. I had Faye Webster in 4-star territory. Didn't get top 10, but great pick. I think that you touched on something. It's kind of an ongoing trend, is so many newer artists are so genre fluid that it's really a cool time to be a music fan. And I think that's going to take off for the rest of the decade. Like, it's really hard to pinpoint what bands sound like. Like, you can list so many influences and little touches, but like, there's really just new stuff going on by taking ingredients from everything. Really cool. However, here's one that kind of presents, what you're going to get with this. And unfortunately, you're going to get a tremendous asshole. I've got Ryan Adams at number 7 with Big Colors. We're not going to talk about him being an asshole, which he is, and separation of artist and air. We're talking about music, so let's get to it. This album is refreshingly new sound without tearing himself down for what you already are learning to expect from Ryan Adams. It's got like almost 80s kind of yacht rock vibes, done with his classic like liquor and drugs, so self-pity and sadness. Don't really know anyone that conveys loneliness and a sense of being in the void quite like him. He does such a good job here. But this one has like, it's there, but it's underlying, and it's got like that kind of 80s facade on it, which is very cool. Almost like a sitcom where at the end, no matter what happens in the plot at the end, everything's going to be all right by the time the credits roll. And it's really impressive that he can take these new flavors of sound and keep it thematic to the Ryan Adams catalog. Sounds almost like 80s Don Henley or Pretenders or Springsteen, in that kind of like 85 to 90 range. Lighter, fluffier disposition though for him, not for everyone, but for him it's definitely lighter. Cool, thin guitar sounds, much less country and folk forward. You get some backing synth with like this full, rich 80s production, and his voice is so calm and razor sharp. Title track is great with his soft falsetto. Lyrics are great as usual. You get a big, robust, big pop track, like It's So Quiet It's Loud, just a really pretty song with huge, wide open vibes and large choruses. Fuck the Rain, which has John Mayer on guitar, probably one of my favorite songs of the year. They recorded this, I believe, in 2019, or at least we're 2019. Okay, so that's obviously this session. John Mayer was like, "Oh, I'm going to do sob rock now," because the sounds are very similar. His sense of melody and writing is always so connected to the emotion of the song. He's great in that regard. Great examples in the pre-chorus of the song Manchester, when he does the I can't forgot. I was trying to do the falsetto. I can usually do the falsetto. I would throw it all away and choose if I could have been born 3 blocks from you, and we would bury the city to the ground. The way he does that in unison with the instrumentation just hits exactly like the lift in the song you need. And once he does it, you're like, oh, it's perfect. Just put together. The craft is phenomenal. Power is a really cool train chugging song where it's how the 80s did 50s throwbacks and he's doing it now. So it's like a grandfathered in kind of thing. It's very cool. He has like a Bryan Adams kind of song with I Surrender. It's got that teenage love suck vibe. And he says, I miss you so bad, so bad. So what? Cool sentiment. He does a lot where he's just like shamelessly in love. He doesn't care how foolish he looks. Middle of the Line's a really cool song. It's got like an 80s Keith Richard kind of guitar part. So I think it's probably my favorite album he's done in like 15 years. I think the sound of it just brings kind of a whole new light and a whole new paintbrush to something that you're already familiar with. And his craft is, as a songwriter, is just always so good that it's kind of hard to mess up. So he just has to find new ways of presenting it. And he does here. Thought his album last year was a little bit drab sounding, but this one just sounds amazing. It's one of the best produced albums I've heard. Number 7, 4.5 stars, Big Colors by Ryan Adams.
I had that one just behind Sob Rock on my list, but it is appropriate that they are working together because they're both huge tools. My number 6, going to hop to a band that I mentioned them on GMA at one point. Cramser said they had a cool name, and I was kind of struggling with them at the time. I didn't really know what I was hearing. But the record has grown on me extremely, and I got Dream Weapon by Genghis Tron at my number 6. Very cool. I must be in like this electronic kind of weird mood this year. Maybe it's the danciness of it. But this thing, I mean, Genghis Tron was like this kind of hardcore band that was known for like scream metal vocals and like blast beats. And they broke up like 2008 or 9. Just lay dormant until they kind of reformed a little bit, got a new singer, got an incredible drummer. I don't even know his name, but he is incredible on this album. Nick Yassishin, I don't know even how to say his name. I don't know who he is, but I love him. And this album is just full of like these sort of Deftone, Rated R, Queens of the Stone Age, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, maybe even like a little Daft Punk Tron soundtrack beats, but it's like a metal album as well. So it's just this really, heavy, dreamy, just incredible drums, giant synthesizers. There's like not flashy guitar solos. I don't even know if there's like a single point in the entire album where it's just like guitar is in the spotlight. Long, dreamy mood pieces, chanting wordless vocals all over the place. And it's just an interesting, weird kind of mix of the two sides, that electronic element, that heavy rock element, but it just comes together in a way that's completely interesting and unique. Pyrocene, Dream Weapon, the 10-minute Ritual Circle, they just kind of go and go and go, and there's just textures brought in and incredible drumming all over the place. Not a metal album for people who like, giant guitar solos and just like pointless noodling and tapping and stuff like that, or for the people who love the screaming and the harshness. It's almost like mood music, and it just fit my mood this year, I guess. So really liked it. 4 stars. I'm still in the 4-star range, but we're getting the kind of upper echelons of 4-starness. Really cool album from Genghis Tron, Dream Weapon. Can't wait to see what they do next.
Man, if there was ever a title of an album that you could just be like, oh, Joe's gonna like this, it'd probably be Dream Weapon by Genghis Tron.
All right, my last 4.5-star record before we get into 5-star territory. And man, this one is real close to 5 stars for me. I almost upgraded it last night listening to it, taking some notes for today. It is right on the doorstep of 5 stars, so maybe in the future it will be. My number 6 is Due North by Liam Kazar. And this guy came out of nowhere this year for me. My brother texted me like, "Hey, have you listened to this?" And I hadn't, and I looked it up and found out that this guy's played with Jeff Tweedy, Steve Gunn, Daniel Johnston. Listened to the record, blew me away the first time I heard it. I think within days, I saw that he was opening for Sam Evian and playing in Sam Evian's band. So went from not knowing the guy to seeing him live within a month or so, loving the record. Also, he's an acclaimed chef and a founder of an Armenian pop-up restaurant. So just all around cool guy. And on his Bandcamp page, there's a quote from Jeff Tweedy, which I will paraphrase. Liam Kazar makes new songs feel like cherished memories. It's a magic trick that very few people can pull off. And that's kind of what this record feels like. I think that's kind of nails it. Just a really joyful, fun record. A lot of really funny, quirky lyrics, but at the same time, it's not just a light party record or something either. I think very much like in the vein of Faye Webster, there's a lot of depth to the writing and it's very vulnerable at times. The sound and the arrangements on every track are just perfect. They fit the song beautifully. I love the slinky, funky groove on Old Enough for You, which I think is one of the slickest grooves of the year. The bounce on Shoes Too Tight is really cool. I love the synth sounds on the track On a Spanish Dune. And I love the pedal steel on Something Tender, which is a track that's just like full of beeps and bloops. It feels like you're floating in outer space or something. And then there's this pedal steel that kind of comes in and grounds it a little bit. I think it's the perfect marriage of music and words from an artist that I think has a really firm grasp on who he is as an artist. And yeah, I'm just all about Liam Kazar these days. Really cool album.
Aren't we all? That's all I talk about.
All right. My number 6. And none of these to diehard fans of the channel, like the super diehards that follow us on everything, should be surprised by any of this. I floated Courtney Barnett and this artist on my Instagram profile, so none of these should be coming out of nowhere. I've got Indigo De Souza with Any Shape You Take at number 6. Like Joe, this is kind of my snail mail spot, like my favorite breakup album of the year. It's everything Olivia Rodrigo's Sour should be, although I don't think that's a bad album. I do like that album. Some really cool modern alternative take on a lot of different things we grew up with, including alternative rock and grunge, electronic pop. At times, she really sounds like Dolores O'Riordan. It's a cool whirlwind of influences with a really nice cohesive element. It's sensual, angry, worrisome, many things. Hi-fi and high emotion. It's kind of like a modern shoegaze goth pop rock record. Song Darker Than Death has really cool electric guitar, little bursts and plucks. The electric guitar on here is really great. It's not ever like taking over or leading everything, but it is the heart and soul of this album, I think. Full of color with the instrumentation on here. And her voice is piercingly beautiful. At times, it seems exactly like just the cool, dangerous twin sister to like Sour by Olivia Rodrigo. But it kind of takes a much more mature element where what I kind of like about Sour by Olivia Rodrigo is you can kind of picture her like sitting on her floor in high school writing these songs. Like it is so unabashedly innocent. She's not trying to go above her element. This one seems like a breakup album where the breakup happened in the past and now it's just kind of like a retroactive, get in the mood, feel what was going on, and then write about it. So it's a completely different perspective. But there's really cool refined rock songs and rock sounds on here. That's the charm of this album. It's seemingly like an undiscovered masterpiece from the early 90s. Like you could have sent me this album and been like, do you ever hear this band from Seattle? They did one album in 1994. Here it is. I wouldn't, there's no way I would be like, no way, this sounds new. It could sound like it came from that era. You get these simple little great guitar parts. It's an album about wounds and about discovery, very emotional without taking you over, beating you over the head with anything, which kind of happens with that Olivia Rodrigo album. It's like, okay, we get it. Boys suck, relax, like just chill out. You know, and it's kind of like a guitar 90s rock album that I've been wanting for so long. Like there's a simple little lick on the song Die a Cry, which is oddly smile and cheerful, and it just gets stuck in your head. Very much a sad girl album. But again, just all in about remembrance. It doesn't really just swarm you with these feelings. It's more, not about her state, but the stories of her life past. Like she's moved on. It's a really cool place she's in doing this album. Pretty Pictures is a great song. Probably the simplest, straightforward breakup song on it. It's really great, lively rock band vibes at the end of the song, Real Pain. The highlight for me is a song called Bad Dream. It's dark, super grungy, one of my favorite songs of the year, and she really cries out like she's like helplessly under this love spell. Huge Cranberries vibes on this song. And then she does this thing where she just repeats, please send help. It's really awesome. Song called Late Night Crawler is beautiful. Probably the poppiest song on here that could have radio potential is a song called Hold You. It's really haunting and cool. It gives you this unexpected synth part and R&B groove, quite poppy. It's a really good listen all the way through. It's kind of dark and gothic and grungy. Very cool. Number 6, Indigo De Souza, Any Shape You Take.
It's interesting. We all have like that one, like you were saying, like Jason got Faye, you got Indigo, I got Snail Mail. And they're all kind of like in the same universe. We all hear them a little bit differently, but that's cool. My number 5, here's an artist that I've completely ignored. And I guess I have to go back and listen to the rest of her discography now because I love this album. I got In These Silent Days from Brandy Carlisle. This one, I mean, this has some of the best rock moments of the entire year on here. Wild Horses, which Obama was on his favorite songs list that he put out. It's like Bonnie Raitt almost playing something from Elton John's Rock of the Westies. The band is just absolutely killer. Production on this album, Shooter Jennings and Dave Cobb, who he's worked with like Rival Sons and Chris Stapleton, knows how to like make a big rock song. And then there's a couple songs like that, but there's also a couple songs, it's kind of more standard Brandy Carlisle, or so I kind of have gleaned. I listened to a couple of tracks from her back stuff, very Americana, kind of softer. So, the big rock songs sort of like blew my mind because they were not what I was expecting. Right on Time, the opener's great, kind of just nice Americana, good guitar, great vocals from Brandy all over. Of course, the closer, Thrown Good After Bad, just kind of like simple Brandy, just kind of rocking out, nothing too over the top, but in that Americana vein, big acoustic guitars, really emphasizes her lyrics, her vocals. Sinners, Saints, and Fools, another big rocker, killer guitar solo at the end. And she even does like this kind of like hoarse screaming a little bit a couple of times, which is really cool, not expecting that. There's a little Joni Mitchell action going on You and Me on the Rock, which has Lucius on it. And I think in general, this song, this album just really emphasizes how good a singer Brandy is, how good a lyricist, how good it all sounds. I love the production. It's kind of right up my alley, that kind of big Americana sound with hints of Joni Mitchell and hints of big Elton John, sort of his Americana stuff, Tumbleweed Connection, Rock of the Westies. And I think it's just a really great album. I didn't even listen to it until like 3 weeks ago because I just wasn't expecting this kind of thing from Brandy Carlisle, but definitely glad I did because it rocks. And my number 5 for 2021.
All right, yeah, that's a good pick. I was really big into Brandy Carlisle with her first record, which I loved, still love, and then it seemed like progressively with every record, she was getting like just a little blander and blander, a little boring. But I think that one was a nice bounce back. I think that's a really good record, a good pick. My number 5-star record is Funhouse by Hand Habits. Hand Habits is the recording project of Meg Duffy, who is a trans artist, guitar player who's played with The War on Drugs, Wise Blood, William Tyler, probably most notably Kevin Morby. They record themselves under this name. And this record just kind of sneaks up on you, much in the way that many of the tracks on the record build really beautifully. The album as a whole does that. It starts well, but by track like 3 and 4, they're amazing. And every track after that seems almost better than the one before. It just kind of like snowballs on you. Really, really cool record. Similar to the Adalia record, you think you know what it is and what it's going to be, and then it shifts just left of that expectation to something that's infinitely more interesting. I think the production on the record by Sasami is really, really cool. It's also engineered by Kyle Thomas of the band King Tuff. Folky indie 1 minute, and then synth pop the next minute on the track like Aquamarine. Then it bounces to like a Neil Young-esque rock song on Concrete and Feathers. And it all sounds great. It all works perfectly side by side one another. It makes total sense, even though it may sound weird with me talking about it, but it totally works. And it's a record of pushing against your own limitations and finding out who you are and what you're capable of, what you can do, both on a personal level and on a musical and on a sonic level. It seems to be a record about searching and finding things. And for a record about that, it finds a whole lot. I think it's really awesome. Number 5 for me, Funhouse, Hand Habits, 5 stars.
Love hearing you guys talk about new music. A lot of stuff I got to listen to now that I haven't. Here's one that I know people in the comments were really all about. Number 5 for me is Black Country New Road for the first time. This is their first album. And good Lord, what a bold first album to make. The thing I love about it the most is I'm still not really quite sure what to say about it. It is a really unique album. Hard to put my finger on it, hard to describe, but I'll give it a shot. I think it's a really wild and crazy, ambiguous, maybe like a more ferocious, like Fear of Music, Talking Heads kind of album, but with like way more masculine adrenaline, touch of prog, touches of like Slint in there. They play with a band called Black Midi, who released an album I gave 4 stars to, who have a bit of a similar thing going. This album is hard, heavy, unpredictable, which is the best word to describe it. Instrumental, heavy at times, and experimental, and really just pure joy and fascination. But it is an album for music fans. It's not something for people that take music very lightly. It's not an easy album to listen to. It's not even really an easy album to understand at times. But it is very bold and very relentless and unashamed of what it is, whatever it is at times. Opens with a really cool, moody, flagrant instrumental called Instrumental, with these almost like Eastern European horn sections coming in that'll come back on the last song. And very odd compositions, leaning heavy on math rock vibes. The lead singer has like a classic avant-garde, post-punk kind of style, but he also gets really heavy and boisterous at times. And the lyrics aren't retroactive at all. They're all very contemporary. Jumps around a lot. And it's so void of a specific sound style or genre that it seems like it could be part of a movement that we look back on in 10 years and be like, oh yeah, like that Black Country New Road record is one of the first bands to really do that. That's kind of how I feel. It's very much rock band heavy. Guitars, bass, drums do a lot of the heavy lifting here in sort of a more meticulously thought out Pavement sort of fashion. But it can be really mesmerizing and totally encapsulating. It's just so new and fresh. That's what I love about it. There's nothing else that really sounds like it. Black Midi a little bit, but this is very different. What it is to me is Space Mountain. It's like being on a roller coaster in the dark. You just have no idea what's ahead, but it's fun. And it just kind of oozes this intellectual kind of venom. It's very fistful and in your face. It can be like vicious and mean with like this unassuming kind of underbelly. Levels of eeriness to it, especially on the track Science Fair. Best track on it is Sunglasses. Really grungy guitar on it. Has that great leave Kanye out of this like rally cry, which is really cool. I think it has great guitar parts and quips and patterns. Really quietly one of the better guitar albums of the year, I'd say. But the album, the heart and soul of this album is the softer track called Track X. The guitar part I absolutely love, and it's exactly what this album needs, this little soft, poignant touch. Really cool string section in it. It's a touchstone of the album, really poetic and lovely. Opus is a great closer. It's a big epic, like 8-minute epic that wraps up the previous songs really nicely in a bow. just an amazing debut, not just for the quality, but for doing something really unique. So I put a big spotlight on this artist for me in the future. 4.5 stars, my last 4.5, the rest will be all 5s. For the First Time by Black Country New Road.
Really liked that review of it. It was very eloquent. I hate that album so much. So if you like things that I don't like, you will definitely like that album. But I just, it's not my worst of the year. I wanted to make it, but that would be a little, I think, too obvious for me. But I will never listen to it again. My number 4, kind of the opposite of that album, that record. No, it's not that one. It is The War on Drugs with I Don't Live Here Anymore. This one is just sort of Adam Granduciel's, I don't know, I want to say a swan song, so I don't think he's going anywhere, but it's, he's sharpened and polished and like just his style. And I think everyone who's watching this video knows his style, the kind of 80s driving beat, the big guitar, a little like Dire Straits, the maybe Dylan-y lyrics and vocals. But on this one, it's just kind of like what he's been building to. Every hook is just absolutely massive. Like it's hard to believe. It's like every track is Red Eyes, pretty much. Every track is just like perfectly crafted with maximum impact for the solos, the sound of it, the lushness, the driving beat. I think his lyrics are great. Even, he throws in the We Dance the Desolation Road, channel Bob Dylan, shout out, call out there. It's pure like indie bait, but it just works so effectively. As far as like guitar hero level, I mean, his guitar basically is unmatched as far as like mainstream rock star. Like nobody does it better than he does. He'll just throw off like a 10-second guitar solo, and it's so melodic and perfect. The fuzz guitar and I Don't Want to Wait, just like it feels new, and like you're listening to like Mark Knopfler and Jimmy Page, and like all the greats are like bringing Adam like up to heaven to play guitar or something, just on the wings of the classic rock gods he flies. And it's very catchy. I Don't Live Here Anymore, the title track featuring Lucius, just a shimmering perfect pop song. Rings Around My Father's Eyes, beautiful touching piano ballad where he strips down like a little bit, but it's still like grandiose and powerful, like a Quadrophenia by The Who or something. There's just like power behind every song, no matter how kind of quiet it gets. It always kind of builds up with that classic power. And the songs, the sequencing, the production, the tones, the guitar tones especially, just amazing. Just a really just fantastic album. Definitely my favorite from them, just because it just brings everything I want in War on Drugs right to the forefront. There's less of that jammy kind of nature and more of just like precision honed, perfect rock and roll. So my number 4 for the year, I Don't Live Here Anymore by the War on Drugs.
We are getting up into some rarefied air. Of the many, many records I listen to, these ones are the best of the best. My number 4 is my breakup record of the year. It is a record called History of a Feeling by Matty Diaz. And I think it's a record that can join the ranks of the best breakup albums ever. Just raw emotion laid bare. A lot of it is about her dealing with her partner, quote unquote, discovering a deeper part of her own gender identity, and then losing that partner as a result. And knowing that just makes a song like Man in Me hit so much harder. Just an incredible song, and I love her vocal delivery on it. I mean, some of the songs on this record are pretty brutal, but her voice is just so amazing, so pretty, so raw with emotion. She sings them so, so well. And then on top of all of that, you get this amazing production from Andrew Sarlo, who has emerged over the last couple of years as one of my favorite producers in the game right now. He's worked with Big Thief, most notably, also Bon Iver, and he did the excellent Courtney Marie Andrews record last year, Old Flowers. He did another record that is still to come in my top 10 this year. And his production is just perfect, understated. It's felt, but never in the way of the songs. The guitar tones on this record are indescribably great. They're so good, especially on the track Think of Me. Some of the best sounding guitars I heard all year. And I love the record. I just think it's a perfect breakup singer-songwriter record with just raw emotion all over it.
That album did not play the same way for me. I did not score it very well. Didn't do it for me. Number 4 for me is Blue Weekend by Wolf Alice. We submitted our final stats and rankings to Jason a few hours ago, and I bumped this back up to 5 stars. It's like the 5th trip. It's gone 4.5 to 5 and back and forth. And I listened to it again a few hours ago, and I was like, it's got to be 5. It's so good. So thank you, Jason, for letting me squeeze that in. It's a 5-star album. Just really good modern anthemic pop rock album. Hits all the right notes, high and low, heavy and ballady, one of the better balanced albums of the year. Just a really good honed craft. And has one of the best songs of the year on it for me, Last Man on Earth, and a bunch more contenders. Beach is a great opener with a classic rock build-up tempo. Ellie Roswell, really good lead singer, does those big wide open yells and spacious soundscapes just with her voice incredibly well. And this album just it's nothing fancy. It's nothing super different. It's just like every little component of pop rock, they just bring to the forefront, make it powerful, and just do it better than everyone else. It's really easy to like. Just a very kind of like U2-esque, simple, emotionally dreamy alternative rock album. Lipstick on the Glass is a great song, great bass, great melodies with just this new updated modern pop rock sound. It's just that simple. Smile is really cool. It's got like that Riot Girl punk rock kind of vibe. So does Play the Greatest Hits, just like punk rock fandom on it. And then there's like piano ballads. There's more shoegazy stuff on it. And it's just so powerful and rich. Every song just sounds like it would be great in a big concert. Plenty of big hooks. Doesn't overwhelm you in that regard, but it's there. Feeling Myself is awesome. The organ key lick to start off and then exploding into this huge like gazy synth storm. Really awesome. All the songs are just so good and just seem so professionally well-rounded. They're good at their core, and then the production just elevates them. No Hard Feelings is tremendous and pretty cool and docile with killer bass. And it's just kind of like an old school great pop rock record with a new modern sound. It's an album that doesn't really get made that often anymore because it's just so simple. And that's what makes it great. It's very unassuming. It's very casually approached. We're a rock band. We have great songs. Let's make them sound great. End of story. That's what I love about this album. 5 stars. All the songs are really good. Blue Weekend by Wolf Alice. Number 4.
I knew that was the one you dropped. You can't get one behind me. My number 4, or no, number 3. Ooh, we're top 3. This is where it gets up to 4.5 stars for me. And my number 3 is going to be from an artist that has never made my top 5, which may be surprising to people. I feel like people would guess that somewhere along the way, this album would be or this band would have released an album in my top 5. They have not until now. I got Hushed and Grim from Mastodon as my number 3. It is just a tour de force double album of sludge and like hard rock, grimy, powerful metal. Mastodon's always been like right on the cusp for me. I really like a lot of their songs, but as far as like a whole album goes, like maybe it's like a little too heavy. It's like a little too like heavy screaming metal for me. This one kind of brings it down a little bit. It still has, Brand Daler, Brand Hines, and Troy Sanders all trading off vocals. Sometimes they're together, sometimes they're apart. Sanders especially has a couple leads. He's got that like really low kind of just harsh voice. but the riffs on here are just, I don't know, it's what, 100, no, it's 86 minutes. And the riffs just kind of continually pummel you. The album was made sort of as like, almost scream therapy to get over the death of their manager from cancer. So there's a sadness to it. There's a realness to it that sometimes I feel like is missing from their music. Sometimes I feel like it's too much, Leviathan was all about Moby Dick, and the concepts sort of take control of the music and emotion. And on this, it feels a lot more personal, but the guitar, the bass, the drumming is all excellent. The vocals, Marcus King pops in on a song called The Beast and brings like a little country western to it almost. And there's touches of that. Like there's a couple lighter songs, Skeleton of Splendor, Tear Drinker has a nice, like this cool synthesized keyboard solo on it. Peace and Tranquility, Dagger, Had It All, has like a little, almost like Allison Chains, kind of Rotten Apple, maybe, something off Jar of Flies. And there's still like the heaviness, the metal and the sludge, but there's just like these little extra shades of gray just all over the place that really kind of opened it up for me, really made me like it. Like I've always appreciated Mastodon, but this is the first album from them where I can like feel the emotion, and it feels a little more personal. And it closes with one of my favorite tracks of the year, Gigantium, which gets even kind of more mainstream metal at the end. It's like half and half. Half is just like charging, riff heavy, Macedoniness. And then it kind of shifts all of a sudden with this kind of like real like Ozzy Osbourne metal guitar solo, some nice choral singing, maybe points forward, a path they could take on their next album that would be even more mainstream. I don't know how the real fans of the band would feel about that, but I would love it because I think they sound great and they can pretty much pull off any of these metal genres really well. So I really like this one. 4.5 stars for Hushed and Grim by Mastodon.
All right, my number 3, our first repeat. I've got Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast. We reviewed this on the channel back when it came out. I gave it 4.5 stars then. It has risen up to 5. I don't know how Michelle Zauner just keeps getting better and better with every album. The melodies, the production, the songwriting, it seems like she ratchets everything up every time out, and surely Jubilee has got to be the peak. I don't know how you could even go up from here. This was billed as her fun record when it came out, and it definitely has its moments. Like Cram said, Paprika is a very joyful song celebrating pop music, basically, and Be Sweet is an infectious pop tune. But there's a lot of other stuff going on emotionally on this record. At least that's how I hear it. Kokomo, Indiana is a story of lost teenage love. Slide Tackle is about wrestling dark thoughts in your mind to try to get to some sort of joy. And she says In Hell might be the saddest song that she ever wrote, about putting her dog down. It's a very layered album covering a huge spectrum of emotions and feelings, and all of it sounds fantastic. Michelle has become, I think, an incredible singer over the last few years. Her voice really cuts through these mixes. Like Cram said, she's got kind of like a high piercing voice. It just cuts like a knife. And it's like her reaching out to grab you, the listener. And I think as a music fan, that's the exchange that you're kind of chasing when you're listening to all of these new albums. You're just trying to get to that exchange between artist and listener where you feel like the artist is giving something of themselves to you. And for me, that's exactly what Jubilee is.
And for me, that's exactly what Lana Del Rey is. My number 3, Chemtrails over the Country Club. I know Joe likes Lana almost as much as I do, and Jason was terrified this would win for me. She has won twice in the past, still only a 2-time winner for me. We all know how I feel about her, how I feel about this album. I love Antonoff's production. I love his collaboration with Lana. I love the sound. It's very distinctive. It's very melodramatic, this really cool, loungy, beautiful 60s inspired songwriter masterpiece kind of way. She's such a good songwriter. She's such a vulnerable writer. She doesn't care if it's cool. She doesn't care if she's pathetic. She uses all these really big details to really put her vision down. It's a very slow, soaking feeling album. It absolutely leaves you drained. It is not an easy listen. Her other albums are much easier to get through, but I love it. Songwriting is terrific. She does her classic, precious, hushed little indie rock princess vibe all over it. Might be one of her best vocal albums, though. Her like ashtray little whispery thing she does on the song White Dress is fantastic. She never quite does that again on the rest of the songs, but she does do just this really low-key vibe lounge singer kind of thing, because there's nothing really heavy or fast on this album. Just love her delivery on everything, her marinated in heartache and weakness. So beautifully pathetic. She's such a slave to her love interests and feelings. Like just a ton of soulfulness on this album. You know, that ashtray falsetto is just so good. My favorite moment of any music in this entire year is like when she does that "When I Was a Waitress" thing, and it's like you can barely hear her, but it's so powerful. It's obviously sexual and attention seeking, but yet empowered, which is, she just walks those lines so well. And the nuance and the mastery in the production is best experienced with headphones. I don't think you can listen to this without headphones and really get it. Like the resonance and every little piano touch and everything is just adds to the whole atmosphere. It's got one of the better low end sounding mechanisms of any album this year. She's just this pretty little rock musing, loving angel wandering the earth on this album. It's very cool. "Let Me Love You Like a Woman" is a great song. And I love the way she says "let me hold you like a baby." Gets me every time. Her melodies and lyrics are just so powerful and emotional and catchy and poppy without sounding like other pop songs. I don't care if you like or dislike Lana Del Rey, but people that go, "Oh, Lana Del Rey," just like Adele and all these other crappy pop stars, she does not sound like anyone else. Like maybe like some of the styles and production and just the new modernized equipment and production make it sound to the untrained ear like it's all the same, but she does not sound like anyone else. No one will convince me otherwise. "Wild at Heart" and "Yosemite" are among my favorite tracks of the year. And just the way they recorded this with the room noise and the natural sounds of the studio adds to like this isolation and loneliness that she conveys. And it's just a really cool like timepiece to the past that may or may not be true, but the emotions and the feelings are true. And it's very cool. 5 stars, "Chemtrails Over the Country Club" by Lana Del Rey.
Honestly, I really just excluded that from my top 10 as a kind of protest against Jack Antonoff, who I'm at war with. So it's really the only reason it didn't make my top 10. Great album. My number 2, we are the top of the pops here. It is an album Cramser already talked about, so it's not going to be my number 1. I feel like people may have thought it would, but "Blue Weekend" by Wolf Alice is going to be my runner-up this year. I think Cramser put it very well in his review. I have it at 4.5 stars, like Mr. Cramser over there. I just think it is the most interesting, diverse album I've heard in a long time. It almost shocked me a little bit, the way it careens from style to style. A lot like last year's winner for me, Sawayama. It kind of had like a more 90s, 2000s kind of feel. This one has like an unplaceable timelessness. Something like "The Beach" has that just majestic build. The layers and effects that they put on Ellie Roswell's voice is just fantastic. I love that the band plays so many different things. Like Rosell is credited with piano, bass, guitar, vocals, mellotron, synth, Wurlitzer, string arrangements. The guitarist does guitar, piano, Glock, synth, electric upright bass, tenor resonator, 12-string classical guitar, and acoustic guitar. And like they just do all these different things. The resonator on "Safe from Heartbreak," amazing. One of my favorite guitar moments of the whole year. Just kind of simple notes and strums, but it just sounds so cool. It's like this little safe haven break in the album. It comes after sort of the Riot Girly Smile. And there's just like these little moments where like breaks things up and just comes out of nowhere. These sounds you don't expect, like an alternative rock band in 2020 to put forth. The builds on The Last Man on Earth is just great. The way they use repetition and then break out of it into this like big, huge number. It's just fantastic song. I love her voice. I think the production is good. It's very, it's not typical. Like it's not the indie rock. It's not going to be what most people, I don't know, most like cool people gravitate to, because it doesn't have like a bunch of guest stars and stuff like that. But I think it just all sounds great. I think the whole band obviously is extremely talented. And I think this is just them putting it all together, writing a really good pop rock, alternative, whatever you want to call it, album. And yeah, just love it. 4.5 stars for sure. Blue Weekend from Wolf Alice.
To be clear, I have it at 5 stars. It has bounced back like 30,000 times, though.
All right, my number 2. So all year long, from January 1st until now, I only ever had 2 albums in my number 1 spot. This one came out in January, so it was my first contender. And then another record came out that took it over, and those 2 ping-ponged a few times throughout the year. But I'm going with Two Saviors by Buck Meek at number 2. He's the guitarist of Big Thief. This is his second solo record. This is another Andrew Sarlo production. Having a past relationship with Big Thief makes sense. But when Buck asked him to do this record, Andrew Sarlo laid out some ground rules. He said that he would only do it if they recorded in New Orleans during the hottest part of the year. They would do it in no more than 7 days. They would record live to 8-track tape. They would use only dynamic mics, no headphones. And he encouraged every recording to be imbued with the living, intuitive, and human energy of the first take. So I don't think that necessarily means that it was all first takes, but I think that was the goal, to make it sound like this is a band just playing live. First take, capture the exploration of like working out these arrangements for the first time. He wants it to feel spontaneous, and I definitely think they achieved that. Buck has an interesting voice, not for everybody. Not a traditionally good singer maybe, but I think a very compelling and engaging singer. I think he's a great storyteller. I think this is one of my favorite lyrical albums of the year. The arrangements are great, but they don't feel overworked. They do maintain that first take feel, like I said. And the secret weapon on this record is Matt Davidson, who releases records under the name Twain, who's really good, worth checking out. But his presence on this record is huge. He plays bass, pedal steel, fiddle, and he sings backing vocals all over the record, which complement Buck so well. His voice is very smooth and kind of balances out Buck Meek's voice a little bit. I just think it's fantastic songwriting, translates very well live. I saw not a whole lot of shows this year because of the whole thing, but started going back to shows a couple months ago. I saw 4 live shows here at the end of the year. 2 of them were my number 1 record and my number 2 record of the year, those artists. So I really got to put them neck and neck. Both were phenomenal. Nothing against Buck. That's not why he's a number 2, because the record was, or the show is fantastic. So yeah, there you go. Buck Meek, Two Saviors, number 2. Just a really good record full of great songwriting. Simple as that.
It's good. It's not great. I gotta have 3 stars. But don't frown too much longer, Jace. You're gonna be happy with my number 2 here. It's the only artist I really haven't talked about on the channel. I haven't hinted at my pleasure of it from Instagram. I've got Wilds by Andy Schaaf. Jason picked The Party by Andy Schaaf a few years ago as his winner. Checked it out. Thought it was really good. Checked this one out. Thought it was really friggin' good. In fact, it's great. It's 5 stars. And I kind of love this guy right now. This album is really bare bones tracks, very quiet and simple, beautiful, rich, and warm, fragile sounding songs with tremendous fixtures of instrumentation throughout. It is a very indie folk record, but it's got a really 70s warmth to it. And him as a singer and as a lyricist, the way he kind of spaces out and does his lyrics with the melodies is so Paul Simon to me. It sounds very much like Paul Simon in a very good way, not just like a clone, but I love it. The instruments on here are really articulate. And the album only gets better and beholds you the longer it goes. And it doesn't go for that long. It's like a quick little 38 minutes. It's like a good warm handshake at first, but then it pulls you in, and then you're whispering some really sweet nothings in each other's ear. It's a great, really compassionate album. His wordplay is just perfect. Some songs are light and perky and catchy. There's really cool like Baroque touches on Spanish on the Beach. Matched against his voice is just dazzling. You feel like these little stories or tales are like have this character in like this perplexing, like yet witty and clever short film kind of place, or like a Wes Anderson movie. It's so cool how it kind of just like meanders about with all these tales. Easily could have been a really good singer-songwriter album from the 70s, but instead it's a really good singer-songwriter album from 2021. It's got a wandering feverishness about it. Songs are really loose behind the lyrics, which I really like. Probably simply put, just the best batch of pure songwriting, I think, for me this year. And probably would have won it had, I don't want to say it doesn't have variety on it, but if it had a little bit more variety and dynamic, it would have won. It was close. And I really love how I haven't really dissected it track by track, but it really feels like every song is better than the one before it, which is really cool, especially for re-listenability, because the second time I listened to it, I hadn't really like read the track listing, and I was like really into it, and I was like, well, when does that one song on that was stuck in my head all last night come on? And then by like third and fourth listen, you just know that it's getting better and better as it goes, which is so great. I love when albums do that. Television Blue might be my favorite song on it. It's got this really beautifully composed, cautious verse. And then it goes in this really loose, pretty entrance into the chorus. But then the same exact composition from the verse slides back in and darkens it up. It's such a cool little piece of writing. Greengrass is really pretty. It's got like this Elliott Smith downbeat kind of to it. Wicked and Wild is tremendous. Jeremy's Wedding at the end is a great closer. My favorite thing about it is how cohesive it is, because it's got this underlying like worry and anxiety to it, which matches like the minimalism of the production. Everything is like pretty and catchy, but on thin ice and teetering on the edge of just falling off and falling apart. It's kind of an album about regret and beauty. It's awesome. Really into all this stuff right now. And this is a strong number 2, almost a number 1, Wilds by Andy Schaaf. Thank you, Jason, for talking so well about his previous work and just making me check it out. Didn't see that coming, did you?
Not at all. What did you say in the text the other day about him? It seemed like you were making fun of him a little, but I guess I just took it the wrong way.
I was kind of trying to throw you guys off the scent because I realized I was just giving away too much. I couldn't shut up. We get so excited for this video. It's like our Oscars. I said he sounded like Paul Simon and Kermit the Frog all at once, which he kind of does, like in a good way. But
Definitely does. I actually listened to the album after you said that. So I was like, well, I got to check it out. I remember his album from last year. What was it? Neon Cowboy or something? Neon Skyline. I like him. I like the new album a bit. Not in my top 50, but I can definitely see why Cramser would like him. I think the Wes Anderson cutiness kind of turns me off a little bit, but I think he's very talented. All right, my honorable mentions for this year. Silk Sonic, An Evening with Silk Sonic, Anderson .Paak, Bruno Mars. A lot of fun on that one. Also, Art of Losing from the Anchoress, a former top 5 for me. Her latest, excellent, much like her last one. Also on my list, I got Motorheart from The Darkness. Just a lot of fun. Great rock and roll with The Darkness's little, impishness. It's all about a sex robot, so play that one well. I also got an album that maybe you thought would be number one. It's not. I'm not going to do that to you. The Battle at Garden's Gate from Greta Van Fleet. I think it's great. I think it's 70s rock and roll. And it's kind of a dying breed these days. I know you guys hate it. Doesn't matter. I don't care. And finally, Chemtrails Over the Country Club from Lana Del Rey. If it wasn't for Jack Antonoff, might even be higher, but screw that guy. White Dress is amazing, though. And I really like her cover of For Free as well.
All right, my honorable mentions. We're only supposed to give 5, but I'm going to give 2 extra because you got a couple that are also on your list. I just want to say how close they were. My number 17 is The War on Drugs. My number 16 is Outside Child by Allison Russell. But my real honorable mentions are Superwolves by Matt Sweeney and Bonnie Prince Billy. 14, Pale Horse Rider by Corey Hansen. 13, Cobra Poems by Daniel Romano. 12 is Seek Shelter by Ice Age. And number 11 was New Fragility by Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah.
Wow, I did like that album by Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah a lot, but only 3.5 stars. Mine are in no particular order, but my honorable mentions will be Ignorance by The Weather Station, An Overview of Phenomenal Nature by Cassandra Jenkins, Seek Shelter by Ice Age, which I think is a band that a lot of our commenters would really dig. And then I've also got Entertainment Death by The Spirit of the Beehive. And finally, No Taste by Bad Waitress, which is a really cool female-led punk rock kind of band. Really recommend checking that out.
Well, there goes all 3 of the things I thought you'd have at number 1. So I am out of ideas unless it's Iron Maiden. That's my last guess.
You'll see it in a second.
Whatever. I don't pay that close attention to what you say or do. Sub 2 stars. My list contains no album sub 2 stars. Why would I listen to a whole album that was sub 2 stars unless I was forced to? My low on the totem pole, I got Justin Bieber with Justice. I think it sucked. Peaches especially. Good Lord. And also, one other thing I just remembered. The little snippets of MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. speeches. Like, come on, brah. Nah. You can't do that. Not you. Like, some people can pull that off. Not you.
All right. I only had 2 records this year fall below 2 stars. One of them is at 1.5 stars, and that is Okay Human by Weezer. And then I have one at 1 star. And of course, that is Voyage by ABBA.
Get them. Get them.
Joe, this is the year I am your archangel. I've got Greta Van Fleet and ABBA at 2 stars, which means I just think they're bad, not incredibly bad. I've got 4 1.5s though. No 1s, just really bad, not tournament worthy. Here are the 4 though. As much as I love Billie Eilish, the album Phineas put out, Optimist, is no bueno, really awful. I've also got Equals by Ed Sheeran, just tremendously terrible. Van Weezer by Weezer, yuck. And Life Forms by Angels and Airwaves, which I don't know why I even gave it a shot, but I think I was just in the mood for like something loud and guitar-y after just like in my listening sequence. So I was like, I'll just put this on. How bad can it be? Really bad.
All right. Well, we're down to it. Brass tacks, baby. Top of the pops. The number 1 stunner. My winner for 2021 has got to be, and this is the 3rd album that occupied my top spot. For a long time, it was JT by Steve Earle and the Dukes. Then it was Wolf Alice for a long time. And then today, pretty much, last couple of days, had a little bit of change of heart, really started listening to this album more and more. And it just, I had to do it. Number one for 2021 is Pink Noise by Laura Mvula. And this one is just like speaks to Joe. It is this awesome mix of like bad era Michael Jackson, Phoenix horns from Phil Collins, Prince, you know, a little bit of like Peter Gabriel, a little bit of Whitney Houston. It's like this late 80s, just aping masterpiece from an artist I'd never even heard of. Didn't know Laura Mvula from, you know, a random person on the street, but somehow I found this album, really liked it at first, and then kind of fell in love with it recently. And it's just kind of like, it's a fun album. And that's definitely needed in a year like this. Like, it's not too heavy. Not that she isn't singing about topical things. Remedy, great protest song under this like dark sauntering groove. Maybe like Peter Gabriel in 1980, kind of, you know, just messing with the synthesizers kind of song. Magical track. It's like Whitney Houston all over it. She's got a great vocal control, more of a mid-range voice. She's not doing like the super sky high stuff. Plenty of disco grooves, Pink Noise, the eponymous title track, just Mvula singing against her own vocals. And, you know, it doesn't break new ground, really. Definite, like, obvious 80s influences, but it sounds just really fresh and natural from her. It's definitely the most fun album I listened to all year. You know, there's a song Conditional, there's these great little Phoenix horns, little runs of sax and you know, brass instruments, big synths, big guitars, kind of a bad level beat on Got Me. And it's just a really cool, interesting album. She's an interesting person. She won the Ivor Novello Award a couple of years ago for The Dreaming Room, which I'd never heard of, but I gotta go back and listen to it. Got like a Mercury Prize nomination, got dropped from her label after. She was in theater, and she comes back with this, just R&B masterpiece. Loved it. Love it, I should say, not past tense. Love it right now, today, more than any other album this year. It's 4.5 stars, and just a really cool, interesting, fun 80s R&B, you know, exactly what I needed in 2021 for sure.
Very nice. I have not heard that record. I'll have to check it out. My number one, everyone should know what this is. At least you guys should. The only thing I've got left, I believe I talked about this on my lone appearance on Good Music America, even though it didn't get an official review on the channel. I've got Glow by Alice Phoebe Liu at number one. A few things make this my favorite record of the year. Number one, she's just my favorite pure singer right now. Basically, I think her voice is just unbelievably great. Number two, the sound of the record, the production, I think is untouched this year. Entirely analog recording process, and it sounds like it. It's just so warm and wonderful. Number three, I think her songwriting takes a massive leap on this record, basically with every track on this record besting or at least matching the best songs from her previous records. And that's not to say anything bad about the previous records I had. Her last record from 2019, I think was my number 11 of the year or something. So I liked it a lot, but it's just getting even better now. It's a collection of very personal songs. It's a quarantine record, and in some ways it feels like it. It's not like she's singing about COVID or anything, but it has this feeling of being alone and of solitude and of not having a whole lot to do except look inward. And basically, it's like the best sounding bedroom pop record you've ever heard. It feels really intimate and homespun, but at the same time, it sounds like it was recorded between takes while Fleetwood Mac was recording Rumors or something. It just sounds so good. How to Get Out of Love is the most stripped down track. If you just really want to get a taste of how stunning her voice is, I would start there. But the flip side of that is a track like Dirty Mouth, which I think just shows how fiercely independent she can be. Lonely Crowd really shows off the strength of her band with a fairly complex arrangement. And like I mentioned, I put it to the real litmus test. I saw her live, and the way she just kind of held the room and the audience in her hand throughout the entire show was phenomenal. The show sounded incredible. One of the best sounding shows I've ever seen. I think she's just way ahead of the pack and still just picking up steam. I think the rest of the decade is pretty much hers for the taking. My number one, Alice Phoebe Lou, Glow.
I did like that album a good bit. 3.5 stars from me, which was a downgrade actually. 4 stars originally, and after a couple more listens, went to 3.5. Joe, you got to know what my number one is. My number one is I Don't Live Here Anymore by The War on Drugs. I think you just got a little lost in the shuffle thinking I'd already talked about it. This was a sweeping win for me. If you saw the listography video where we all reviewed it, I was gaga for this album. I can't wait to see him in February. You already spoke about it, Joe, and you spoke very well about it. It is exactly what you want from this band. Great, steady downhill, big thumping beats, on the kick bass, guitar hooks that could just be pop songs themselves, and the guitar line's so good. At the same time, new and fresh and nostalgic, which is really hard to pull off. It's a great 80s update, catchiness through the roof. Nothing fancy, just every little note is so clean and polished. Americana rock, a la Springsteen, Dire Straits, everyone else you throw in when you talk about War on Drugs. The listenability to this is just magical. Like, it's just, to me, it's the best sounding record of the year, which is why I have it over Andy Schaaf. But you can't slight the songwriting on here. These songs would sound great just with piano and acoustic and voice. It's a big step forward in the songwriting department, but doesn't lose any of the song textures or mood or vibes. I think when we did the review, Jason very eloquently said, like, for the first time, the production takes a back seat, but doesn't disappear. It's great. Really immersive quality to everything. Harmonia's Dream is a tremendous track. That backing dreamy soundscape, so rich, such a vivid dreamlight state, but it's like a lucid dream where everything's recognizable and full of bliss. It's awesome. I think my favorite thing about it is what the album's about. It's about moving forward, reflecting on the past, weighing consequences, getting life lessons, and like the songs kind of take the folk quality of that sort of vibe. And lyrically and musically, it's almost like self-empowerment. Really powerful sounding songs and just powerful like motivation behind it. I think a lot of the songs sound like they could be like just perfectly put in like an 80s movie where you went through the plot and all the drama and now you're just going off into the sunset having learned all those life lessons. That's what almost every song sounds like in such a cool way. And like every other War on Drugs record, their use of space and time against the backbeat is just so perfect. There's never a little 5-second guitar lick that should be 4 or 6 seconds. It's just perfect. It's just those little 3-note little guitar parts get stuck in your head with like great use of repetition. But they also have little more creative sensations on this album. Like I Don't Want to Wait, got really cool like Peter Gabriel vibes to it. Really great lead on Victim. Those are little electric piano leads and then like the synth part on top of it. Title track, that guitar part that just never goes away, is so awesome. Pretty and memorable. Just gives you this wholesome feeling of self-discovery and power and warmth. I think that song, the title track, would be so cool for them to open with when I see them in February. I think that would be great. And the album just sounds so freaking good. It's tailor-made for my earbuds. Like there's not a computer that could form an idea of a collection of sounds that would be more Kramzer than this friggin' album. Pure bliss. Not a bad song on it. Just sounds, whole album is like you're in a convertible riding off into the sunset. It's great. Feel good drama of the year. There you go. The War on Drugs. I Don't Live Here Anymore. 5 stars. An easy win for me. Probably the strongest album review of the three of us if it's in everyone's top 20. And, I think Joe had it at 4 or 3 or something. So really good showing. Really good showing for that album among us for the whole channel.
I would say if you went back throughout their discography, more often than not, they'd probably be in all of our top 25s every year, every release. I think they made my top 10. They never appeared in any of my lists under my top fives. And I think this might be the first year ever, like since 1963, 4, where I did not have a single old artist making my top 10. 0. None in my top 5, none in my top 10 even. It's hard to believe.
I think a lot of those old artists from the 70s are kind of reaching their expiration date, where I think a lot of their voices have deteriorated to the point where I think they're well past their prime at this point.
There were some exceptions, as you guys probably already watched the award show on our senior circuit award. But I thought there were, I don't know, I thought there were some pretty good old artist rockers this year. Nothing amazing, nothing among the best. Like last year I had the Psychedelic Furs in my top 10. Nothing came close this year to an older artist getting into my elite, but you know, I think, but you're right, a lot of the voices are like, it's time to hang it up. So
well, there we go, we did it. That's the year. And just a reminder, this is listography. The name listography is winding down here. We've got a couple more days of it left. Tomorrow's Song of the Year video will be the final listography video before we rebrand. If you missed that announcement, we are changing the name of the channel to Taste Like Music. So that will be starting on January 1st. If there's any confusion for the next couple of months, sorry, hopefully everyone adjusts quickly. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you stuck it out. This is a long one, but it was fun. Can't wait to do it again next year. Can't wait to listen to 300 albums again next year. So leave your favorite records down in the comments. Let us know what you think of our picks, if you've heard them, or maybe if you go check them out, come back and let us know what you thought of them. Be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have not subscribed yet, it will still count when the name changes. Not going to be any different. You don't have to resubscribe to something new. And yeah, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram in the description. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.